there's actually a kind of a wobble in the axis. The axis of the Earth is wobbling, and every 24,000 years it wobbles backwards, causing precession. Now these are the two models we have. This one comes from Copernicus, I believe, Copernicus or Kepler, but I'm pretty sure it's Copernicus. And Isaac Newton did a lot of study on this wobble, the precessional wobble. But now Walter Cruttenden is showing how this is the most feasible of them all. Now, when Sirius is moving away from us, like this, it's red-shifted. 2,000 years ago, Sirius turned blue. Blue-shifted means it's coming towards us, so it's turned the corner. Scientists know for a fact, if you just Google Sirius, you'll find that it's flying, hurtling towards us at massive speed. And it's blue. Red-shifted, moving away. Blue, moving towards. Now, for some proof, I brought along Marcus Manilius, the astronomer to Caesar Augustus. And just to show that Sirius has really been the subject of a lot of study, and it's always been observed with a lot of interest.
It's a massive focal point for the Egyptians as well.
Excellent, it is. How important is Sirius? They call it Isis.
Yeah.
Sometimes Osiris. But that is the chief star. When it comes up early July, that tells them
the Nile is rising.
The Nile is rising, and what else?
And
the red blood in the Red Sea.
Well,
that's because it was a red
energy
star.
source in the pyramid is just about to be topped up.
Yes, what I was thinking of was the fact that the dog day is coming.
Yeah.
The 2 or 3 weeks of scorching heat. And why do they call it the dog days? Because Sirius is the dog. It's the dog star. There's 2 dogs that follow Orion in the sky, and Canis Major has Sirius in it. It's the brightest star in the sky, and it is the dog star. And in July, when it comes up behind the sun, when they see it rising heliacally, they know that, man, the next 2 or 3 weeks are going to be very, very hot, and they call it the dog days, and they're sweating because of the dog. This is the dog. This is the follower. It dogs this star. It's following it. It's the dog that follows our star. Now, this is also, I'll go back to the colour. Here we go. Hardly is it inferior to the sun, speaking about Sirius, save that its abode is far away, and the beams it launches from its sea blue face are cold. So that's before our Common Era. That's over 2,000 years ago. It obviously turned around the time that poem was written, because Aratus, 300 years earlier, the famous Greek astronomer, said it was red. But not only did Aratus say that, the Egyptians call it the red star. It's the red star. Sirius has been red for a long time. Now there's only 4 red stars in the sky, by the way. So this was the fifth. The fifth. There's another one that's orange, but there's 4 bright red stars in the sky. All the rest are blue or white. Now, when Sirius is red, you know about it. And we know that it's blue because we can see that it's blue. This is one of the arguments that Walter Cruttenden brings forth to prove that we are in a binary. There are many others, but you have to read the book. I can't spend much more time on this because I've got to keep moving. We've got to get to the Platonic solids. But any questions about that quickly? Is it pretty simple to understand? Those 3, I mean, I've been talking with most of you guys about this for so long. Yes, how they move. Okay, so they do this.
They're always opposite each other.
They're always opposite each other, according to Walter Cruttenden, right? So, what have I done? I should have gone.
Swapped the lines, yeah.
Yeah.
Make it a bit faster in the middle.
When they're here, the distance is very short. When they're opposed to each other, where we've been for the last a good chunk of our history, probably this would have been this point here was Walter Cruttenden said Crittenden says that this was the year around about 500 CE. That we turned the point. So Walter Crittenden obviously is ignoring Marcus Manilius's quote because he's 500 years late with the turning of Sirius. But nonetheless, it happened somewhere in this part of our history. This turning is, takes probably about 4,000 years, because remember, this is 24,000 years we go around here. But what the ancients say is that when we're over here, we're in the Dark Ages, and we're on about 25% of our consciousness. Now, we know for a fact that we're not using all our brain and our consciousness. That's a scientific fact. But what they say, and this guy does it so beautifully. This is one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. When he talks about this cycle that we live in, the Indians call it the Yuga cycle, and they believe that we're in the Dark Ages here, we're in the Silver Ages here. The Bronze Age here. We're in the Silver Age here, and most of this, when we go around each other here, we're in the Golden Age. And the Golden Age lasts a lot longer than the Iron Age. So we're probably around here. As we approach 2012, 2012 now is another thing that I must talk about. So remind me not to jump to the Platonic solids without going through that. That's very, very important. This turning point here is where we are in history. And I'll explain that scientifically. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is that when our stars are around here, we go to 100% consciousness, 75%, 50%, and because we've turned the corner from the Dark Ages, this was the 1500 years ago was the worst of the Dark Ages. Yeah?
I've got a question. Someone said that when we get closer, the two stars get closer, it speeds up.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Would that be the magnetic pull?
Yes, it's electromagnetic, yes.
Like magnets when they come together?
Yes, but
What's the gravity mass?
But don't forget they're also opposing each other as well.
But the good thing that you mentioned about that is, and thank you for mentioning it, is that explains the difference between the 25,920, because obviously this calculation must be sort of based around this part of history, but the 24,000 year, which is more accurate because scientifically, and the figures are here. Walter Crittenden's done the figures because we've been monitoring, scientists have been monitoring precession for the last 150 years or so, and they've checked the figures. Now, I could have prepared myself a little bit better and found where it talks about those figures, but he proves that the rate of precession is speeding up. It is speeding up, that's a fact, it's speeding up, and if it keeps speeding up the way it does, at the rate that it's going, it will reduce down to 24,000. It will correct itself down to 24,000. Now, quick note, we have 24 hours on the clock. Okay, so I believe, and so does Walter actually, that 24 hours is a microcosm of this macrocosm. Okay, sorry, another...
No, just to stay closer in a bit.
Oh yeah, sorry, okay. Now, so that was pretty simple, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Probably lost it, see I could have turned that on. If that helps. Now, the thing with 2012, remember that point that I had around here? We're going back towards Sirius, okay, that point there. I'm going to show you what that point is. That is our Milky Way galaxy in profile. Okay, we know that it's a spiral. It's a spiral just like that. Our Milky Way galaxy from above is a spiral, but from the profile, from the plane, it's about a millimetre thick if you stretch it to 2 metres. That's how I've had it described. What happens is our sun spends 12,000 years above that plane and 12,000 years below. Now remember that sine wave from the start? And you can check this out, and please, I recommend you to study the subject of 2012. There's some great DVDs. and videos on YouTube. The best one I can recommend, and I'll put this on for record, is Timeline to 2012, because it explains this model as I'm doing it right now, okay? So what happens is we just do, it's up and down, up and down. That's how the cycle works. We're 12,000 years in the northern hemisphere, 12,000 years in the southern. We are right here now, and scientists have been watching that equator for, I believe that the sun kissed that equator. Now I've got the wrong colour for the sun. Pretty pedantic, isn't it? The sun kissed that equator in the early 90s, I believe. I'm not sure.
I think it was late 80s.
Yeah, check it, but I think it's 36 years for the sun to cross over. So we are right about sort of there now, and at the 21st of December, the solstice of 2012, 2 years and 2 months away, we will be perfectly, or at that point there, and then the sun will forever be, or for 12,000 years it will be more over than under. Now that is going to produce many wonderful, weird and wonderful effects on this planet. You notice the weather changes, the weather. Have you noticed people seem to be kind of shifting in their consciousness, in their awareness and whatnot? Well, if you go through some of these wonderful prophecies of the Hopi Indians, and you don't have to go to the Indians, you can go to the Bible, you can go to all the holy scriptures of your choice, but they talk about a time when this will happen, and it's called the end of the ages. It's a pretty prominent theme in the Bible, but it's been misunderstood by Christianity. I'll explain as we go, and it's wonderful. This knowledge, by the way, when I begin to get into the actual science, it's very, very empowering. You're going to love it. And it's going to teach you how to think, not what to think. This will teach you how to think, and really it will lift your consciousness up. What they say mostly is that this part of the southern hemisphere is the male part. Why did I do that? The male part, and this is the feminine part. This is the yin part. This is the yang part. Male is electric, positive, magnetic, positive, negative. When we're in the southern hemisphere, we're polarized to our left brain, male, left brain, 5 senses, logic, very, how could you say, boxed in, very compartmentalized, all of those things that come with left brain. But we are supposed to be flipping over to the right brain, which has the intuitive, the feminine side, the creative side. Okay, so we're experiencing supposedly this consciousness shift right now. I don't want to go into too much of that because it's not my field, but these are some of the things that have been suggested. You can do your research on that, and I really recommend you do, because it's very interesting. Everything you learn about this subject connects with what I'm going to show you. Enough about the 3 fundamental motions of the solar system, but that is a really good grounding to understand. You must understand those 3 cycles: the day, the year, the great year. Simple as that. Now, platonic solids. There are only 5 shapes that will fit into a sphere. Now, is that good on camera? Can I go closer to that? Yeah. Those are the shapes, guys. The tetrahedron, the hexahedron, the octahedron, the dodecahedron, and the icosahedron. Notice that these have triangles, and this is pentagon and square, okay? Now, these are the only shapes in the universe that will fit into a sphere perfectly and touch all those edges perfectly inside a sphere. Now, even with the most advanced computer graphic programs that we have, we cannot find a 6th shape to fit in there. Am I wrong? Or am I right? Genius in the corner. I'm right. I know I'm right because I researched.
So I think you might be right.
Yeah. So these are the platonic solids. Now, why am I discussing these? Well, because scientists say with atomic theory that all atoms will either